Holly Cotton here, and I am super excited about our guest today. So, I have Dr. Bridget Cole Williams, and Dr. Bridget is a cannabis specialist, and she's going to talk to us about cannabis, CBD. Listen, whenever I heard Dr. Bridget was talking about this, I had to get her on here because there are so many shops that are popping up now. The CBD
Mhm.
is like such a huge topic. Everybody wants cannabis. And so she is going to explain all of that to us. She's going to differentiate just cannabis smoking weed to actually cannabis use, and how that's a how it's also, a holistic approach to lifestyle. So welcome, Dr. Bridget. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate you having me today.
Okay, so first let me give you guys Dr. Bridget's bio.
Mhm.
So Dr. Bridget, like I said, she is a medical cannabis specialist. She is an author. She talks about the holistic approach of it. She is the CEO of Green Harvest Health. And basically, she just has patient-centered care, which is what the goal is for everything, where we treat each person and their conditions and their symptoms specific to that person, and not just give them a broad treatment plan. So I guess first, Dr. Bridget, can you explain to us exactly what you do as a cannabis specialist?
Sure. I'm a family physician by trade. I spent almost 20 years at the Cleveland Clinic and had a patient early on that breast cancer survivor and diabetic that started asking me about cannabis. Back then, I thought she was off a rocker, basically. But I started doing some research and realized that there were a lot of medicinal value to this. And so I started working with her, which is how I got into this space. And so for me, I was introduced to it in the most medicinal manner: a cancer patient, a diabetic patient. And so when I started to open my own offices, I realized that there were a lot of people who were looking for something other than, opioids or a lot of the pharmaceuticals, and really had no experience with cannabis to even know where to start. And a lot of them didn't want to be high at any point, and those options are available. So I wanted to start working with patients to use in the most medicinal manner, to be able to provide guidance for them, so that they could possibly get off of some medications, for me to work with their physicians when necessary, and just allow them to regain their wellness.
I'm a nurse, and
Mhm.
so I do know a couple of the like topics. Sometimes we talk about, they get very medical
Mhm.
oriented and focused. So I love how you broke that down and explained it so that anyone can understand.
Mhm.
Now, whenever you said the point about not wanting to be high, I
Mhm.
thought that was a key to, whenever we're trying to talk about cannabis use and
Mhm.
CBD use, I think that's the first thing people are afraid of, because they're like, you hear cannabis and then they have a weed picture next to it.
Sure.
So people are already thinking that they're going to be high. So, can you explain the difference between cannabis and actually just me going out and smoking weed that I buy from the weed man on the corner?
Sure. So, number one, you have no idea what you're getting when you do that, right? Um, the fact of the matter is that not everything on the street is safe, and they're not able to tell you anything about it. There are over 100 cannabinoids. These are the active aspects of the neurotransmitter, actually, that's in the cannabis plant. And so, some of those that you're familiar with are CBD and THC, but there's 100 other ones as well. And there's the essential oils in the plant that make a huge difference in how you experience cannabis, right? So we call those essential oils in the cannabis plant terpenes. When you are trying to decide what you want, if you're going to someone on the corner, they can't tell you what they're selling, right? Some things make people anxious, some things make people too sleepy, some things make people too high. You don't really know what you're getting to be able to use it in the best manner, let alone what aspects would be most helpful for what conditions. So when you go to the person on the street, no idea what you're getting. where when you are working with a specialist or going to a dispensary, you're able to, they should have lab reports for everything that they're selling. And the people working there should have knowledge of what they're providing for people, so that if you have pain issues, neuropathy, cancer, whatever your condition may be, sleep issues or anxiety, they should be able to say this would be better for you than something else. It's really using it to focus on symptoms or diagnoses and conditions that you want to get better.
Okay, so let me ask you this, just one more piggyback on that.
Mhm,
So, okay, let me be honest. I know that my kids are gonna listen and watch this. So, so back in college, I'm not gonna
mhm,
say I never partaked in
mhm,
smoking marijuana,
mhm,
but I do remember having that feeling of high, like you said, and that's what
mhm,
people are concerned about.
mhm,
So, how do you? I know you were saying about the neurotransmitters, but just break it down for anyone
mhm,
specifically. How do you help me where if I have an ache or a woe or I feel nauseous or whatever, how
mhm,
are you able to get and isolate that without
mhm,
me sitting around like how I would be in college and now we're
mhm.
going to Waffle House at 2 a.m. because we got the munchies?
Right, right. So the fact of the matter is, THC is a majority ingredient in a lot of things that you're getting, let's say, off the street or in the dispensary, right? But there are other cannabinoids that cause a high, and there are other cannabinoids that block that high or don't cause a high, right? And so, whenever you're using CBD and THC equally, which is a lot closer to the natural plant, before we started kind of doctoring it up and making different strains, CBD will block the high that you get from the THC, but still allows you to have the other medicinal qualities that THC offers, right? So for a lot of my patients that don't want that feeling, and they use it every day for the last 5 years and have never been high once, because we recommend things that don't give that high feeling. Keep in mind that for some people it's a um, sought after feeling and aspect that they're looking for, and for other people it's an unwanted side effect. And so we measure those out depending on what you're trying to treat, what how comfortable you are with that, so that you should be able to use it in a way that you're comfortable with. So I meet people from where they are, and then we adjust things accordingly.
Okay, got it. And so the ways that the methods that or the way that it's packaged is I'm gonna smoke it or it's oil,
It's
correct?
anything, like I start wherever people are. First of all, wherever state you're in, they have different guidelines.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
first of
This is
all,
back. Dr. Bridget, mine was when it was legal.
right, absolutely. So wherever you are, that's what I would recommend. And I do
Hmm.
consultations all over the US. So I definitely
Hmm.
look to see where are you, what's legal, what's acceptable, what have you. But I do recommend tinctures, which is an oil you put underneath your tongue. It absorbs into the vessels underneath your tongue. I do recommend edibles because it might take a little bit for it to kick in, but it'll last for 6 to 8 hours. So you're not having to redose continuously, right? And sometimes I am recommend inhaling, right? Because you need something that's a lot faster acting, so that it can, like if you have a migraine, for instance, right? Once that migraine hits, you don't have 2 hours to wait for an edible to become active. And you could use a tincture that will activate in about 15 or 20 minutes. But when you inhale, it's activating in typically anywhere between 1 to 10 minutes at the max, right? So if you have a migraine, you want to kind of try to knock it out as quickly as possible. But there's other things, let's say, if you're trying to improve your sleep, right? That it might take an hour or two to kick in. So you have to kind of plan ahead of time. But because it lasts for 6 to 8 hours, you'll get a more restful sleep. So depending on what you're trying to treat, also what you're comfortable with is what I recommend.
Okay, thank you for breaking that down. That was very informative. And that also explains why I always hear stories that people talk about when they had an edible, how it's the next day. Dr. Bridget.
Yeah, every bad story starts with, well, I had this edible, or I went back, it was so good, I went back and got some.
And it makes sense because, like you said, if it's still 6 to 8 hours, that makes total sense why. Like, it's just you're high for however long.
Too
So
long. And the thing is that being that it might take an hour or two to kick in, you've tried your friend's banana bread. I don't know, right? And you're sitting there and you're waiting and you're waiting. Oh, well, I'll just have a little bit more. Oh, and I'll have a little bit more. And then by that 2 hour mark, and you went
right.
right over the top. So you do have to be a little bit more patient with edibles. Now we do have something called nanotechnology that does activate a little bit sooner, but that's not everything, right?
Mhm.
So you have to know what you're getting for the most part. But in general, that's what we say with edibles. That it's going to take about an hour or two to kick in, and if you're not patient, that might not be for you.
Right. Right. And disclaimer, you heard her. She said, "Don't keep eating the banana bread."
No, no, no. Every bad story starts like that. Or you just take too much at one time because whatever it is, it tastes good.
Mhm.
How harmful can one little gummy be, right? But if you are inexperienced and one gummy is anywhere between 10 milligrams to 40, let's say, or more, and what we say a starting dose for someone that is cannabis naive is about 2.5 milligrams. So just taking one gummy, though it seems benign, could make you kind of unhappy at the end of the day.
Noted. No,
Yeah.
I've never had one, and I'm really not going to
Now
now.
you know. I tell people all the time, cut it into fourths. Take your
Okay.
time. Figure out what your body is ready for
Mhm.
before you just say, "Oh, I'll have one. Boy, that was good. Let me have another one." And now you're in a mess that you can't get out of.
Yes. I'm following the disclaimer, Dr. Bridget. Don't worry about me.
But very good. Very good.
Okay, so tell us about you as the founder of Green Harvest Health. So give us some insight into that.
Yes. So, Green Harvest Health. Well, when I decided I wanted to do more in the cannabis space, originally I figured I would just join one of these card companies that you see around and hear advertisements for. But when I started talking to them and I said, I'm excited to do research and do treatment plans and follow ups and do medicine, they're like, look, we are cards for cash. We don't do any of that. We don't care about any of that. We simply do cards and make money. And I was like, well, this isn't for me. So that's when I decided to pull back and really looked at my career. And I had an incredible relationship with my patients at the Cleveland Clinic, but partly because we were both frustrated. I wanted to be more invested in them. They wanted more time with me. And so I was putting them in on my lunch hour and at the end of the day, some of them, so I could spend more time. So I decided to create the office that really honored the patients that I had always seen. And that's worked well. So Green Harvest Health is what I started. Before COVID, we were opening our fourth office. But with telehealth that we were able to do during COVID, we scaled back to two. And I now left actually Green Harvest Health to my ex husband, and I started Dr. Bridget MD. And so that we work together, but separately. So I'm still involved with Green Harvest Health, but Dr. Bridget MD is my own um, aspect of cards and consultation at this point, and involves more the integrative aspect that I get involved in, where I'll be starting a weight loss clinic soon, where I'm actually going to integrate cannabis aspects into it, along with I do just more medical aspects under the Dr. Bridget MD brand. And I also have my Embody brand under Dr. Bridget MD, which is a beauty and lifestyle CBD brand.
Hmm. Okay, first of all, go ahead, Dr. Bridget. I know that's right. I know that's right. Okay. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I just wanted to also confirm. So whenever you're talking about cards, you're talking about
Mm.
like the card that says I can have cannabis or whatever.
Right. So across the country, states that have medical cannabis programs, usually they start by having physicians that will evaluate whether you fit the criteria to be in the program. Okay, so a patient comes in, they have arthritis. Okay, chronic pain is one of the conditions that will allow you to have a card. And so then I provide basically, literally, every state's a little bit different, but you end up getting some sort of some people call it a license or certification, but it's basically a card that allows you to go into a dispensary to buy product. Okay. Um, Even in states that have recreational, many of them keep their medical program because they tax the recreational products a lot higher.
Mm.
And with the medical card, you don't have to pay those specific taxes. Okay.
Mm, okay.
So that's one of the reasons why people always keep their medical card. Also, depending on the state, what you're able to get with a card and without a card differs. Traditionally, it was that higher THC products were on the medical side, and there was just a more diversity in what was available for a medical patient, where the recreational products were not quite as high THC at times. They just had a little bit, it was a little bit more mellow, a little bit more controlled because they were not being supervised by a physician at all.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for breaking that down. Because I was just curious because I know a few people and so that that's what they always say. I got my card. I got my license. I got my
Right.
the popo can stop me. I got my card.
Well, the one thing because I taught at the Cleveland School of Cannabis for several years, and I've heard, my students say that. And the one thing that I always reiterate is that the card, it will not get you out of stupidity.
Hmm.
You do something, that card will not help you if you are doing wrong. Now, if you are doing right, then obviously having that card is confirmation that you are doing the right thing. But if you are driving erratic, that's not going to help you. You're still driving erratic. If you're doing the wrong thing, you're still doing the wrong thing. If you're doing nothing wrong and they need confirmation about why you have cannabis in your car or your trunk, or now you have proof. Oh yeah, I'm doing the right thing. But if you're being
Hmm.
stupid, you're just being stupid. Like, I think people think it's a get out of jail free card.
Right.
And I guess in essence, where at a period of time where having even an ounce would get you prison time, yes, I guess it is in that sense. But if it's just bad behavior, bad behavior is bad behavior. So
Right. You know what? I love Dr. Bridget. She puts a disclaimer on everything. Like that's like me being a nurse. Whenever my friends or people ask me for medical advice, I always follow up but follow up with your primary care doctor.
right,
Don't
right,
quote me on that. If you
absolutely,
die, it ain't my fault.
exactly, right.
I love it. I love
Part
it.
of what I love about just being in the cannabis space is that for me, I educate, like a primary aspect of what I do is consultation. And it is empowering patients to take their health back, their wellness back. And so the idea is that I educate you little by little over time. So in some cases, you probably don't see me as often, right? Because you're learning how to utilize this in a way that can be beneficial. And when you need more assistance, you come back. And so we want people to understand this and use it in a way that's safe and responsible, so that they are sometimes on less pharmaceuticals, that we don't want people to get into space where they're overusing. I ask people all the time, are you using cannabis or is cannabis using you?
Mhm.
And if you can't answer that quickly, then there's more conversation to be had, clearly,
Mhm.
right? So it's about empowerment, it's about education at the end of the day.
Okay, I love that. I love that. So, okay, so your best-selling book series, Courage and Cannabis,
Mm.
and explain to us what I guess what the topic of that is, because courage in cannabis, it makes me want to Ooh, Courage in Cannabis. I want to go read the series. So
Right.
tell us about what I guess the genre is, how the book is, and then we'll after that, then we'll circle back and you can tell us because she also has a new book. Is that part of that series? That's okay. Oh, so she has a new book coming out too. So tell us about the Courage in Cannabis series.
So the Courage in Cannabis series is I was seeing patients in, the very beginning. We started seeing patients at the end of 2018. And at the time, there's a lot of political banter about home grow and social equity and, activism and all that. And I was seeing these patients, and I had grown men that as I was handing them their card would start tearing up. And I remember one guy in particular said, I'm taking this home to my 10-year-old son so that he can see that his dad is not a pothead. I'm a patient. I had women that said, I'm taking my card and I'm going back to church because they felt ostracized. And I realized that there was this whole other set of stories that no one was talking about. In addition, the patients that were coming back to me and saying that they were sleeping better, their pain was better, their anxiety was better, they were doing better with their cancer treatment. And so I wanted to document these stories. I was a big fan of Chicken Soup for the Soul back in the day, and these short stories that were inspirational. And so I wanted to be able to document these. I started writing them actually myself and had the opportunity to publish them. Something didn't feel right. I kind of pulled back for a little bit. COVID happened and everything changed during COVID. And I learned about how to do anthologies where people write their own stories. And so that first book, I brought together a group of 18 people that wrote how CBD or cannabis changed their lives. And we were #1 bestseller on Amazon. From that, I had even more people that wanted to share their story. And so the second book's 39 authors that is actually launching over this weekend and going into Monday. And so, yeah, it's it's an opportunity to read diverse stories around in history, because history repeats itself. If we don't make note of it, we will blindly go down the same road again, right? And so you'll be able to read stories from doctors and lawyers, so many patients, moms about their children, legacy market, so people that were a part of the illegal market at whatever time, um, educators, entrepreneurs. So really, we have a collection of stories that is interesting to anybody, across the board. And yeah, we're in the midst of and we have an extra education section in the new one because there are people that said they were compelled, but they needed to know more about it. And the book has been in the hands of legislators and churchgoers and celebrities and everything in between. I've had some colleges that have utilized it as part of their platform as far as their education. And so basically all research is a collection of stories that have been turned into data. This is basically those stories without it being the data. The focus is on the person. So, yeah.
And I'll be honest, I too am guilty of the embracing the stigma of cannabis use as only for recreational. Even though I'm in healthcare, even though I do practice a holistic lifestyle, I preach the holistic lifestyle. That's my whole platform, is about the holistic lifestyle. But I think that it's important, and there's definitely a need for what you're doing, because like you said, the lady felt like she was ostracized at church because I'll be honest, I'm in the South, so
Mm-hmm.
I grew up Southern Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember our church being so devout and critical. Smoking cigarettes was seen as a sin.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you smoked a cigarette, like
That's the worst
those,
thing we could ever do.
the
Yeah.
church ladies were like, you were like a prostitute.
Mhm.
because you smoked a cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that like you said, allowing people to do that. And do you have, before we talk about one more thing, do you have a story that like really hit you where you kind of keep it in your heart? Is there one that you're like, wow, I still remember when this, made me feel good, or I felt like I made a difference?
Gosh. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's stories in the book. They're my own patients. Um, oh gosh, there's so many. Let me. I told you I sprained my back, so I'm moving a
Uh-huh.
little gingerly. But this is the new book,
Okay.
and honestly, there's so many amazing stories that really touch home, that that really make you kind of stop. I think, one person, the first name that really kind of hits me here is Julie Doran wrote her chapter, and it's an amazing story, really, about kind of PTSD, and oh, I almost don't want to give it away, but how she found herself in really the hemp space. She ended up being a hemp farmer, but uh, she was not witness, but her love of her life boyfriend ended up committing suicide, and how her life stopped. She was very, very young, in her early 20s, and she wasn't really a cannabis person whatsoever. And how it allowed her, there's all these pharmaceuticals and what have you, but how it allowed her to kind of get back into life, mainly from the hemp point of view. So more the CBD than the THC aspect, but not absent of the THC. And it was such a incredible insight into her, how that one moment and how this plant really changed the trajectory of her life. She's very much an activist now, still a farmer, brings people into the space. And so she's someone that I knew from afar, but I never knew her backstory. And then to have such a greater understanding of what was going on was just so revealing for me. But I've had patients that have struggled with cancer, and they've done really strict protocols, and I've seen tumors shrink. I'll tell you, I had one patient who was one of the most severe fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain condition, patients, that she was actually a test study at the Cleveland Clinic. And so when she comes to me for cannabis, I was like, what am I going to do here? Right. So I started out with a decent regimen, but literally already I was thinking, okay, if that doesn't work, this is the next step. And she came back in for a follow-up, and I was already ready, because I was like, if has this severe pain, and if it's this difficult, I got to have a better regimen for it. And she sat down and she started crying, and I was like, oh, I really messed up. Right. And then she was like, this is the first time I've been out of pain since I was like 13
Oh.
years old. And then I started crying as well, because, I was already kind of geared up for the negative. And
Mm-hmm.
to know that it made that big of a difference in her life, was, that's when you sit back and you're like, I'm in the right place. I'm doing the right thing. So,
And basically go get the book so you can
oh,
hear all those great stories.
yes.
I
Absolutely.
love it. I love it. I
And
love
so
it.
we're on Amazon. So this weekend, you'll be able to, on Monday, you'll see on social media, you'll actually be able to buy the
What's the date? Tell them the date for
for
anyone that's
July
listening.
29th.
Okay.
We're doing our big ebook launch. So this is how we try to get to that number one status. So definitely, it's on Amazon. If you're at Courage and Cann books, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, you'll see a whole lot of stuff going on. If you go to our link tree, you'll see all of the events that we're doing over the next several days, and it'll give an opportunity for people to buy it. On August 1st, you'll be able to buy the paperback on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles as well. So definitely, look us up and find us. You know, at any time, the book is there for you.
Got it. Yeah, and y'all heard all them dates and everything and all the stuff. So don't worry. And I'll have also in the podcast notes, I'll have all of Dr. Bridget's information, links and all of that. So if you missed all of that, you can also just look in the podcast notes. There's clickable links. So
Absolutely.
the last question that I wanted to ask you about, Dr. Bridget, was when you were talking about cannabis schools, and one, I didn't even know this was a thing. So I was like, okay, sidebar, let's talk about
Mhm.
that. So,
Mhm.
what? There's schools about cannabis, or and how does that work? And how are you playing a role in that?
Absolutely. So, across the country, there are different types of cannabis schools. So let me say
Mhm.
that. But across the country, there are different institutions that provide cannabis education for different reasons, right? So many of them are built for people that want to be in the cannabis industry. So they might be a little bit more on the vocational side. And they provide teaching people how to work in dispensaries, how to grow, how to extract, how, every aspect that you can imagine, right? There are some that are, there's a lot of like educational webinars for, educators or what have you. I started teaching at the Cleveland School of Cannabis, um, 2019, and continued through COVID. So probably through 2021. And because the students were amazing people. Now keep in mind they had students from like 18 to I think 80, to be honest with you. Some people were there to work in the industry, but there were other people that were very interested or curious or believe that this might be something helpful for them and for their own medical conditions or a family member. And so there were different tracks that you're able to be on as far as curriculums. So, like I said, there's some people that want to grow because they want to be able to be cultivators and grow cannabis or hemp, while other people wanted more of the medical information. Some people wanted more of the business or dispensary information. So, Cleveland School of Cannabis offers a number of virtual as well as in person opportunities to learn more.
Okay, okay. I was just curious. I was like, man, they got schools now too. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm super cool now, Dr. Bridget. Like I can have a whole conversation with my son now because I feel educated.
Well, this is the thing that we have to figure out. We have no problem with a glass of wine in front of our
Mhm.
kids. And keep in mind, we're a drinking drunk country. We can drink something, something all day and it's not a problem. We are an anti-smoking country, which I get it, right? For good reason. And whenever you combust anything, you are releasing carcinogens, so it makes a lot of sense. But beyond the inhaling and smoking, and first of all, there are cannabis drinks as well, right? We need to help them understand that what's actually a little bit safer for you. And there was actually a research article not that long ago that said that this new generation of 20 somethings are actually going to bars less and drinking less alcohol
Mhm.
because cannabis is so widespread across the country. And honestly, it's not a bad thing. You know, everything has to be in temperance. You don't want anyone overdoing anything, but the rate of addiction with alcohol and that how it can deter your life goals is much higher than it is with cannabis. So I'm not saying that I'm promoting that for our young people. I'm not. But I do want people to have informed decision making.
Right, right. Yeah, and not to mention, liver cirrhosis and all the alcohol poisoning that comes from just drinking. So I'm glad that you brought that. Okay, so last question. Okay. So I just went to Las Vegas and
Mm-hmm.
it's very
Mm-hmm.
I feel
Everything.
like I was high just walking around in Vegas. I
You don't
feel
need to buy anything. You don't
I
need to
was
buy one thing.
all
Yes.
you got to do is go on Fremont Street and you're high as a kite. Okay, so if I am in a state or a state that where it's legal like that,
Mhm.
okay, and I know that we were talking about the medical cannabis and how they take out the TCH or what
Yeah. THC. Mm-hmm.
THC.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to a state and that it's illegal, and there's these stores on every corner or whatever. So I go in one of these stores,
Mhm.
and I don't want to have the high, but I do want, like you said, the therapeutic, the soothing effects or whatever.
Mhm.
How can you guide me? Can you give me some advice of what I need to be looking for when I go in one of these stores where I'm not
Mhm.
looking to get high, but I'm looking for the
More
therapeutic
therapeutic
cannabis side?
options. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. So, and depending on where you are in the country, there's a number of different places where you can benefit from this. What I would say is to start, you can just go in and say, I want a 1-to-1. 1-to-1 means 1 part CBD to 1 part THC. Okay. So when they're in equal amounts, that you won't get that really high feeling. Now, the higher you go in CBD to THC, you're going to get even less of that feeling, right? But a 1-to-1 for most people, you get the benefits without the high. And so and you're able to get that in almost every form. There are cannabis flower strains, so flower that you're able to smoke or inhale or vape, that come in a 1-to-1. There are, obviously gummies and tinctures and pretty much anything that you're looking for that comes in a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay. And that's where I start most people. If you're also wanting to inhale, but you're not really as comfortable, and keep in mind, we didn't dig into like the indica and sativa, and there's a whole thing behind that.
Right.
But sativa is a little bit more elevating, and for some people, edgy, and indica is a little bit more relaxing. For some people, almost like you can't even really move. You just get so slow, right? So there's something called hybrid. Hybrid is a combination of indica and sativa plants, so it's also more balanced. So if you want the most balanced aspect, ask for a 1-to-1 and see if they have a hybrid. So a hybrid isn't going to make you edge, and it really comes to the essential oils that are in the plant, the terpenes, that make one feel more edgy or feel more slower. And hybrids are kind of right in the middle. Okay. So a 1-to-1, and if they have a hybrid, that's the way to go.
Okay. So when y'all see me in New York and Vegas and Colorado, mind your business. Because it's not legal in Texas. I
Yes.
don't think they'll ever make it.
Sorry.
But anyway, I digress. Okay, so you guys, Dr. Bridget, for anyone who refuses to go look at the podcast notes, can you tell us your website, any of your links, social media handles, and drop all of that information again?
Yes. So the easiest way to find me is drbridgetmd.com. So it's DRBRIDGET. I'm Simple Bridget MD.com. And you'll find mostly everything that I do on there. But you can also find me on Instagram at Dr. Bridget MD, Facebook, Dr. Bridget MD. And I do sometimes at Instagram Live. Oh, TikTok, Lord have mercy, at Instagram. I'm at Dr. Bridget MD, and you can always send me messages there and reach out to me in that fashion as well. If you just want to email me, go to info@drbridgetmd.com.
Okay, great. I love it. Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Bridget. I feel like I'm so educated. I mean, I know, like you said, we only just basically just knocked the top of of the
Mhm.
snow cap off, and it's so much more into it. But I really appreciate you breaking it down, and then also I appreciate what you're doing, and definitely feel honored to have you on my show, because what you're doing and breaking that stigma, I think it's really important, and it's definitely needed in
Mhm.
the society today. So I love that. So that is Dr. Bridget, you guys. Thank you, Dr. Bridget.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to come back and talk some more.
Yeah, I might get you and you can break it down, and I'm gonna be like, Dr. Bridget, I got this right here. What is this?
And I'm always happy to take those because people need to know. So I'm always happy to help.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great.
Absolutely.